Hello, my friends. This is Andy over at Falco Canine Academy. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to be talking about an article that I posted the other day, and based on the comments and a few private messages I got, there seems to be some interest into going a little bit deeper into why I don't agree with her. But again, I got to always admit that I love people that have a passion for something and that they take a stand to a certain extent. And I don't get offended, I think, as some people do. What's funny is that I do a lot of stuff on my private page that kind of gets people kind of going and discussion and riled up and that kind of stuff. And I find it very fun. I got I had a friend of mine who said, you having a bad day? And not that actually, I had a really good day. Well, based on your posting, sounds like there was a lot going on. But I was really enjoying myself with some of the comments that were going on. So it maybe drives some people crazy and seems odd, but I love the social commentary that's found on Facebook, and I find it more entertaining. I don't take it as serious as other people do. So I like the entertainment of Facebook, and it does that. Even when I post something as frustrating as I got a PC around Christmas time because I need one for my business, and I was reminded of why I can't stand PCs and will never. I have to use this one because there's a certain thing that I do in regard to watching videos that only play on a PC. This one little thing. And some people even said, well, if you have to have two devices and be an Apple person, no, it's just these stupid DVDs. So I love Facebook. I love the controversy. I love the articles of a woman. What's the article? I forget what the title is. Boulder woman hopes to ban choke, prong, shock collars for dogs. And apparently she's starting some type of campaign where she is going to, her name is Mary Angeli, is starting a campaign and hopes to get the proposal on the 2018 ballot. So she's going to get a law passed that bans those types of training equipment for dogs. I don't want residents in Boulder to feel alienated or badly if they're using them, Angeli told the Daily Camera. This is about educating people and showing them there are other ways. Choke collars are made of metal links that allow owners to control their dogs by having the collar tighten around the dog's neck. Yeah. Prong collars feature a series of prongs with blunt ends so that when it is pulled, the prongs pinch the dog. Yes. So far, so good. The article is correct. Shock collars, or electronic collars, as many of us call them, have electric currents that allows owners to deliver anything from a vibration to a full-on electric shock. Yeah, that's true. If passed, Boulder would be the first city in the United States to enact such a ban. So, and there's countries that have banned electronic collars, that kind of stuff. So just if somebody could comment really quick, just make sure you can hear me. I guess Kim can hear me because she wrote yes. Yes. And so we're going to visit. I'm going to take a road here that on the surface may seem like very, I hope it doesn't seem off topic, but I want to talk about that there's some people, and I don't know, this lady, what was her name again? Gosh darn it, I forgot her name already. I'm a horrible person. I forget people's names instantaneously. Mary. So I don't know if Mary's a dog trainer. She very well could be a dog trainer. I don't know. But even dog trainers lack knowledge in dog training. And I've seen it 100 times, 1,000 times, maybe 1,000 times. There's many dog trainers, and I be one of them. And I do my very best not to badmouth other dog trainers in name or anything like that. I do say maybe there's another way or there's a better way that I have found for me. Based on the dogs that I train, I have these tools and things that I find are better for what it is that I'm doing with people. And I think that's what I'm going to try to explain the best that I can. Now, I've also been told that some of these videos go on really long. And I don't know that some of the things like the lady got killed by her two pit bulls, because I've tried to come on. I've thought about coming on and doing a shortened version. And I'm not sure that I can, because I have to give you the background, right? We have to set the stage for where my information comes from. I think that's important because I never know where these videos are going to be seen. I know there's many people watching these videos of me for the very first time. I know many of you think that I'm just ultimately famous all over the world, but no, that is not true. I am, there are some people that don't know Falco Canine Academy. Thank you, Gina. Yeah, she's a Karen Pryor graduate. Oh, that's good. I love Karen Pryor. And so let me get rid of my lower third there. Let me actually add this so people can know where'd my agenda go? Hello, agenda. My agenda disappeared again. Agenda. What the heck? I don't know what happens. I have an app that I use called Be Live TV. It's fantastic, except for every so often, things just flat out disappear. Like right now, there is no agenda. There it is. I found it. Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's in a weird spot now. It kind of disappears. So let me go ahead and bring that up. So you're watching. Wow. Lost something else. All right, things are disappearing right before my very eyes. I just clicked on it and it went away. And I clicked nowhere on. That is really strange. Here we go. Let's try it again. Falco Canine Academy. Thank you very much. Wow, that's so weird. All right, so everything's back to working now, I hope. My name is Andy Falco Jimenez. I'm the owner of Falco Canine Academy, and so back to the pit bull thing. There is a little bit of you gotta set the ground floor or the basement or the foundation for which I'm speaking by talking about what's my history. How do I know the things that I know? What is my experience? Got to know that I saw something a lot in order to give my opinion about it. And so I think that it was very difficult to do that thing and keep it under the amount of time that I kept it. Now, towards the end, we did gab about some other stuff, but that's just the way things go. So I'm not sure that I'm ever going to be able to do a shortened version of that thing, but I'm going to really try to do my best to keep this kind of concise. I always want to make sure and share this report with you all. And especially those of you that are visiting for the first time, because this is how we may be able to communicate with you in the future. And that is by you downloading this report by following the link that I'm putting in the comments right now. You just click on that link. That'll take you to a place where you put your name and email address. You'll get a free report, but you'll also in the future get some emails from our company that will tell you about some programs we have going on, including a trainer program, a Train the Dog Trainer program, and some other stuff that we're going to possibly have a competition coming up for obedience and other things. So, Nicholas from Argentina. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're watching. Why do trainers always think that using a prong collar, e-collar is punishment? What about correction? What does this trainer think? What does this trainer think? What is positive training? Who knows? I don't know, but we're going to find out. But actually, we're not going to find out from her, but we're going to find out a little bit more. And I'm hoping I'm doing this justice. And again, I don't ever hesitate to put what you think on these comments. I don't mind at all, honestly. I want to hear from you. Gina and I had a great discussion about the pit bull thing. And I think it's awesome. It really does educate me. I feel after doing this for 30 something years or so that I have still not learned everything there is to be learned. There's so much. Cameron Thompson, who I've recently connected with, is a dog trainer out of San Diego, and she has some great information, some great knowledge, and was on her Facebook Live yesterday, and just loved listening to her talk to her group of people that follow her. Doesn't let me click on the link. It doesn't. Oh, dale. All right. I'm sorry. I'll see what I can do about that. But let me get to. I need to really get to where we're gonna start talking about the subject matter here, and that is whether or not there should be a law against prong collars, choke collars, and electronic collars, because it's not just as simple as I am a clicker trainer. If that's who, she's a graduate from Karen Pryor, she may have this, this belief that clicker training is the only way to train a dog, and for her it could be. And I love trainers who know where their niche is and where their power is, and that is where they need to be, because that's where they're good, and that's the kind of dogs they're going to help most, or the humans are going to help most, or those people that want to do that kind of thing. for Falco Canine Academy, we get all the dogs that get kicked out of the clicker training people's class. We get all the dogs that get kicked out of PetSmart and Petco. We get all the dogs that are going to be euthanized if we can't help the people with them. So we get a number of those dogs. We also have very nice dogs that come to us, and we just try to make them better. And maybe we don't use any of those tools. But as I said in my post, if you go back, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that the tools that we choose here at Falco Canine Academy to use with a team is not based on what we would say the dog needs. It's based on what the human needs, and what is going to allow this human to keep this dog that they love so much in the home and actually take it out for a walk, right? That's the important thing. It's not whether I can train that dog without a pinch collar, which I, in most cases, can. In almost every case, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, I take off pinch collars, electronic collars, and choke chains and train most dogs with a flat collar. Why can I do that? Well, I'm a dog trainer that's been doing it for a very long time, and I have a special knowledge from that experience that allows me to train dogs in a manner that Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who has a dog that's completely out of control, cannot, because they don't have 30 years of dog training experience. They will probably never have 30 years of dog training experience, and they simply just want their dog not to attack the next dog they see on their walk. That's all they want, right? And so to put them through a training method that may be difficult for them to understand is probably not the way to go. So that's where we're going to get into this part of the presentation. So I'm going to bring up a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here. I'm going to make it solo, so that's the only thing you can see there. And I think that shows up, right? And oh yeah. So let me get over to it. So I'm going to actually make it to play here. And so and I'm not going to explain all this. This presentation that I'm showing you right now is fairly, I wouldn't say it's fairly old. It's probably about 5 or 6 years old, maybe longer. I haven't brought it out of the mothballs for a long time. So I'm not going to go through every detail because quite frankly, I might get something wrong considering that it's been such a long time since I've taught it. But just understand this. When we have a dog, you have your innate behaviors or instincts that a dog is genetically found with. You have some that are simple, which are essentially reflexes, taxis, and kinesis. And these are the things the dog just it just responds to, right? Reflexes, taxis. When it smells food, it goes towards food. When it's born, when it's blind, it smells the milk coming from the mother's nipples, and it uses its nose to move towards taxis, towards the dog's nipple, right? These are reflexes or instincts that are simple. These are just responses to the odor. The dog follows his nose. One of the first senses that the dog engages is his nose. And he finds where's the nipple? And then he fights his way to the nipple and fights off the other dog and gets a nipple, right? So those all fall under, in different ways, reflexes, taxis, and kinesis. All right, then you got the complex ones, which are fixed action patterns, which I think would be fall under the dog circles before he lays down, or there's certain actions he does. He kind of moves his butt around before he goes poop. Those kinds of things. Migration, which is pack related. Circadian rhythms, which are things that are just what the body goes through at certain times, and those are all complex. Those are what the dog is born with. Then you have your learned behaviors. Learned behaviors are habituation, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, insight learning. And we're going to get into a couple of those. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because that would require a behavior class in order to get through all these things. But what I'm trying to do is give you a picture of how you cannot just simply say, hey, I'm going to get rid of these things because I don't like them. And I don't think we should ever give a dog a correction or compulsion or aversive because I don't believe in it. And so because I don't believe in it, nobody else, whether you have an aggressive dog or a dog that's way too strong for the 90-pound woman, again, the dog's 130 pounds, regardless of that, you should not have these tools to be able to keep a dog that you love in your house. All right, next. So let's really quickly go through classical conditioning. As we know, most of us know, or you know, is that it's it starts off with an unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned means that it's just simply, it just is. The dog just simply likes food and wants food and needs food to survive. Unconditioned response is the dog tends to salivate, right? It's unconditioned. It just happens. It's just one of those things that's not based. We didn't build it into the dog. You got the food, and which is unconditioned, which the dog needs. It's a stimulus that the dog needs, and then the unconditioned response that the dog salivates. And so what we're going to bring into this equation is a neutral stimulus, which in the case of Pavlov would be the ringing bell. For detection dogs, it would be the tennis ball or a Kong or something like that. Kind of not neutral because some dogs are born with a desire to play with the ball, but we're not going to get into all that. But we're going to bring in a neutral stimulus and then bring in the unconditioned stimulus, and we're going to link them together. We're going to plus them. We're going to put them together and create them as one. So ringing bell, food, and then the dog sees the food, smells the food, and begins to salivate. But his ears hear the ringing bell, right? And we do this over and over and over again. And pretty soon we've married the neutral stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus to create what would be later on a conditioned response, right? So we have the conditioned stimulus, which is the two things combined, which I should have put bell plus food there, but I didn't. Conditioned stimulus, which is the bell ringing, and then you go immediately to conditioned response. So you don't even need the food to be present. I'm going to come back off of this for a second and come back to my screen. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's do this instead. All right. So already we've seen that dogs are a lot more complex than just simply, I just want to be nice to dogs. That there's things going on that we can't control. We got the genetics. We got the learned behaviors. We got trained behaviors. We have to deal with classical conditioning and all these other things. And so we can already see that we're building up, that there's more going on, right? I like to tell people that dog training is fairly simple. It is once you know all this stuff, but there is a lot going on that you need to be aware of. And it's just not simple to say, hey, there's only one way to do this, and it's not with aversives or corrections of any sort. All right, so getting back into our little talk here. So now we're going to add, let me go ahead and bring this up, is we're going to bring in, with classical conditioning, you have to concern yourself with extinction, spontaneous recovery, generalization, and discrimination. So really quick, extinction is simply you're going to take away a behavior, right? You're going to in the case, I think maybe the easiest way for me to do it is with the bed bug detection dogs. With bed bug detection dogs, we have bed bugs inside of a vial, which also has cardboard inside, which also has dead carcasses of dead bugs. All right. We don't want the dog to search for and find the vials, the cardboard, and the dead carcasses of bed bugs. We only want them to find live bed bugs. So extinction would be, during the training of the detection dog, is to teach the dog to ignore on plastic bags, because we often carry them in plastic bags. So we want the dog to ignore plastic bags. We want the dog to ignore the vials. We want the dog to ignore fecal matter, cardboard, and dead bed bugs. And so we place those in the environment and teach the dog to ignore those, essentially making them extinct. And because in every time the dog finds them, that's always present. So we want the dog to ignore that or make it extinct and only find live bed bugs. So that's extinction training during classical conditioning. Spontaneous recovery is something that happens with every detection dog, and that is sometimes they go back to those things like plastic bags and they alert on them as if they were, 1,000 bed bugs. They just spontaneously go, hey, you know what? There's that thing, and they give it a shot. Nobody never knows exactly why that happens, but that's why dogs cannot be 100% because they're of the spontaneous recovery that occurs. Dogs that generalization is what we like to have in detection dogs. And that is a dog that's learning the odor in, say, the cinder blocks in the beginning, and then will generalize and go inside of a house and find that same odor in any other environment. Not a lot of dogs generalize, but some do. And so that's why then you have to not only train the dog the odor, but now you have to begin training him in different environments so the dog understands, oh, I'm supposed to find bed bugs in these other environments, just not in cinder blocks in your garage or on your training facility. And then discrimination. We want the dog to discriminate between the other things that kind of smell like bed bugs and that but aren't bed bugs. And so we want the dog to learn to discriminate between that odor and other odors. All right, so that's all falls under. So we're adding even more things that complicate the process of training a dog. All right, operant conditioning. This is where we get into corrections. And so we essentially what we're saying is that behaviors have consequences, right? They either perform it and they get something positive, or they perform it and they get something negative. So you got reinforcement and you have punishment. And then between those, you have positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. You have positive punishment and negative punishment. Positive reinforcement is easy. You give the dog a pat on the head, you give the dog a toy or a treat, right? One of those three things is generally positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement means that you're taking away something. Anything that's negative means that you're taking it away. So in the case of electronic collars, what you do is that when the dog is learning the electronic collar, we give the dog stimulation. In other words, give him an electronic stimulation by pushing down the button. And then what we do is we teach the dog that when the dog comes to us, then we remove the electronic stimulation, telling the dog that he's in the right spot. So in other words, when we let me actually come back to my screen, so it's a little bit easier for me to do this really fast. All right. So what we do is that when the dog is far away, we're going to pretend this is the remote. All right. This is the remote for the TV and the electronic collar. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to, when the dog is far away, we give stimulation. So the dog feels a little bit of electricity, low levels when we do it, very low levels. And then the dog gets a low level. The dog feels a low level and goes, what is that? How do I turn that off? And you teach the dog to turn it off by coming, you pull the long line and you bring the dog next to you and you release the stimulation. That is negative reinforcement, right? The dog is feeling something he doesn't like. The way that it goes away is when he does what we want. And thereby we remove the negative stimulation, all right? The next thing would be, where am I? The next thing would be down in punishment. You got positive punishment. That's where you give a correction, right? Or a no. The dog sticks his head in the trash can. No. The dog lifts his head up. He goes, oh, crap. I shouldn't have done that, right? So that's, we've added a stimulus, and that is a loud noise. That's us being angry. We've added that, and the dog goes, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. All right. So that's positive punishment. And then negative punishment is that we remove something from the dog's to show that he's being punished because we've removed that thing. So in the case of, let's just see, we're trying to feed the dog. He's not sitting, right? We're going to put the food down. He's not sitting. And so then we remove the food and put it away. That is kind of an example of a negative. And so we're taking that away because he's not doing what we want. Or we can put the dog in the crate, right? We're taking away his freedom. What else? There's a couple things for some reason I'm drawing a blank. And so that's operant conditioning. And so, oops, I'm not on the right screen because you can't see what I'm doing. All right, let's go back to the broadcast here. There we go. All right, so in the case of operant conditioning, you have these different things you need to do. And that's where the punishment, I guess, that people call it, or the aversive, or the compulsion is all the names for this kind of stuff come in. And it is a fantastic way to train. We train children this way. Employees are trained this way. It is a fantastic way to train because it makes it so much more firm. It gives us options. It makes things stronger with operant conditioning. There's nothing wrong with classical conditioning because that's how we train detection dogs. And that's how we do other things. And I have no problem with classical conditioning when we're training dogs certain behaviors. But when we're talking dogs with bad behaviors that we're trying to fix, quite often operant conditioning is the thing we need to go to. Why? Because consequences shape behavior. It is true. Consequences shape behavior. Again, I often talk about how that is true with children. And if it's true with children, then it is true with dogs. And I give many examples of how this works. And because we've taken something away from our children doesn't mean we're horrible parents. It means that we're good parents because we firmly sit our child down or we firmly grab them by the arm and make it a little uncomfortable for them, just like we would with a dog with a choke chain or a pinch collar. And it's teaching them that they have a consequence. Now, do I need to do that with all my kids? No, I have 5 kids. Every single one of them is different. Every single one of us is different. And so you have to understand that there's some that respond better to having things taken away. There's others that respond by having things given to them when they do things well. There's others that have a little bit combination of both. And there's some that are just simply perfect, which are all my kids, right? All right. So this is an important thing to remember when we're dealing with reward-based training is that partial schedules of reinforcement are important. Partial schedules or variable reward system is so important. It's because partial schedules of reinforcement are more resistant to extinction than continuous reinforcement. If you're constantly rewarding, at some point the extinction can become possible because it then becomes the norm. The dog or the child is just always getting things for free, or they're getting things for doing stuff all the time. There needs to be a consequence every once in a while to know that there is an option for failing, that there is an option for doing something wrong. If children always are getting rewarded, and this is the problem that I have with every child gets an award or gets a trophy for playing soccer or for playing hockey or something like that, that when you're giving constant reward for doing stuff, that it really doesn't shape the behavior. It shapes the thought that everything is free, that if I just be good, then I'm always going to get something. And if I'm bad, then they just wait until I do something good, then I get something good again, right? And so there's many ways that this has an effect on both children and for both dogs. And you have to understand that there at some point needs to be an aversive. There needs to be failure. You need to put your dog in a position where he fails so that he understands that there's a consequence, both positive and, very importantly, negative. And I think that's so important, especially when we're talking about big dogs that have some issues. Now, you have lap dogs that don't do anything, right? I have my son right now who is Bo. He's 4. And I know he's going to end up having some bad behaviors. He's starting to get a couple here and there. But for the most part, I have very little that I have to correct him for. And I tell him, son, it's time for bed. He goes, sir, yes, sir. And he jumps up and he runs and he puts his pajamas on. He knows exactly what that means. He goes pee and he brushes his teeth. All right. And that's just who he is right now. I don't know. Obviously he sees how the other kids get punished, right? They have an aversive when they do something wrong and they get something positive when they do something right. But he's learning from watching others. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on too. So he has the advantage of seeing what happens with the other children, and dogs can learn the very same way. But there's something really important about the shaping of behaviors, that at some point you need to have some type of negativity occur so that you can show somebody that there is a problem with failing to do the right thing, failing to follow through, failing to have good behavior, right? There has to be a consequence. You can't just always simply be giving good reward and rewarding it all the time, because it will become extinct. It will go away. And so by doing it partially, by going to a variable reward system, where that also may include a consequence of punishment or correction or aversive, you're going to shape a much better, well-rounded dog. Now, you have to make sure that you don't go over the top, right? You can't go over the top on rewards, just the same way you can't go over the top on the correction. It has to make sense. It has to be in a way that doesn't cause so much pain that they think they're going to die, which is the old way that I was trained to train police dogs. I have been honest with you that I come from a world where we were trained in police dog training when I was in my early 20s. That was completely horrible. We really did. And they still do today, use inhumane ways of training in many of the circles that I used to play in. I guess that's not the right word. Used to be in, where it is completely inhumane, and that is unacceptable. All right. So let me just check. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint here. Have you rehabbed real problem dogs like Akita, Doberman, Borbell? Yes. Maniacs. Pit bulls and there's been a couple that were just not rehabilitatable, and we've used it all. Funny enough that you bring that up is that some of the worst dogs, you know what we use? We don't use corrections like a pinch collar or electronic collar or a choke chain. We put a flat collar on and sometimes don't use any collar at all with the really bad dogs. So you have this thing, right? You have a dog that's pretty bad. He's acting aggressively, that kind of stuff, where we will bring in a tool possibly based on whoever the human is, and we will bring in some type of aversive type of collar. And then, but if they're really bad, we don't use anything, which is very strange. And we go completely the opposite direction, which is a whole nother story. But that's not, I didn't want to necessarily talk about that, because they're going to say, well, see, you just said no, because there's other things you have to take into consideration. But that's a whole nother story. And I definitely will get into a little bit later on. I work with your friend Aldo Secchi. This is Nicholas from Argentina. 2 weeks ago in a seminar he did here at our homeland, and we use all kinds of color according to the situation and the dog. Right, was a great experience. Fantastic. I love Aldo. Of course, he goes back and does we're brothers. Shout out to the awesome trainer, Amanda Rice. Hey, Amanda Rice is here. Let me click on the link. Sorry about that. Okay. So where am I? Jack Pitt. I think oh man, this thing is driving me crazy. Sherry, I often use the example of how I don't give my teenage boys an M&M when they pee on the potty because of some point when the behavior is learned and understood as the correct behavior, a consequence is earned if it is not performed. All right, well, nothing wrong with that. All right, good. All right, let's get back to the presentation. I'm really happy to see this presentation because I haven't seen it in such a long time. It's bringing back some good memories. All right, and I could go a little bit deeper on these slides, but I'm going to keep it to this point right here. All right, so this is really important for you to understand. So partial schedules of reinforcement are important. Partial schedules of reinforcement are more resistant to extinction than continuous reinforcement. So important. That is why giving every child on the soccer team a trophy and most valuable player is horrible. They need to learn that when you lose, you're a loser. When you win, you're a winner. When you try hard, you succeed. When you follow through and act as a team, you're way better off, and there's more reward to be gained by working as a team and scoring goals and working hard and practicing hard. You train hard and you'll fight easy. And you have to know this. It's so important. All right, sorry, off my soapbox. All right. So aversive control behavior is motivated by the threat of something unpleasant. And so you have these two types of things. You got escape and you have avoidance learning. And just really quickly, escape is back to our electronic collar situation, is that the dog is feeling the discomfort of the electronic stimulus, which doesn't have to be strong. It just has to be slightly uncomfortable. And then the dog wants to escape from it. So the dog comes to you and heels, and you turn it off, right? The dog is escaping the discomfort electronic collar. It is fantastic training when you do it right and you don't go high levels and you do it in a way the dog can understand and you make sure the dog can be successful. You have to make sure of all of those things for it to work properly and to maintain a happy dog. And then you cross over into avoidance learning, where you tell the dog when he's at a distance, heel, apply the stimulation, the dog turns it off. You say heel, you apply the stimulation, the dog comes back to you and he turns it off. And then the next time you say heel, the dog responds, thereby avoiding the electronic stimulation, and the dog comes to a heel. That's when he gets into avoidance. And that's not bad. It sounds like it's a bad word. Oh, he's avoiding something horrible. No, he's learned I can avoid the stimulation if I respond to the cue, which is the here command or a slap on the leg or something like that. So it is really important to understand aversive control, because if you don't, then maybe you are doing something wrong with an electronic collar or a pinch collar or a choke chain. All right. So now here is the most important part. Now, we talked about the dogs a lot, and much of what, of course, because I talked about kids and that kind of stuff, can be brought into the human side of this thing. But here's right why the pinch collars, choke chains, and e-collars can be so important to dog trainers to learn and understand and make sure you have in your toolbox, is because we're dealing with human beings. Pet dog owners come to us for two reasons. Either, and there's probably others, but right now I'm just going to point out two. People come to us for training because they love their dog and want to give it a good life. They love their dog and want to give it a good life, but they can't because the dog is out of control, because they have horrible timing with their dog, because they are sending the wrong signals to the dog, or they've created the problem with the dog because they love their dog too much and they're allowing the dog to run all over them and they don't give the dog leadership. But they love their dog and they want to give it a good life. And that's what's important to remember about these tools, is that we're not giving them, at least not Falco Canine Academy, and I'm sure none of you that are dog trainers are out there are giving them these tools to punish their dog because we hate their dog and they hate their dog. No, we are giving them a tool because they love their dog and they do not want to lose that dog, and they would love to take their dog out for a walk, but they can't. They can't, because again, I always go to the one descriptor, which is really easy to understand. And it's a woman who's 90 pounds, who has a 120-pound German Shepherd, who's pulled her over on her face, but she loves it because in the house, the dog doesn't do that. In the house, the dog is perfect. In the house, the dog cuddles up to her or does exactly what she wants, but out on a walk that she would love to be able to do with her dog, she can't, because the dog wants to take out the kid skateboarding down the street, or a bicyclist, or another dog. The other reason people come to us is because the dog has become a liability and they feel obligated or have been forced to get help. They may not love their dog anymore. They may have a love-hate relationship with their dog, but the dog has become a liability and they feel obligated or have been forced to get help through animal control or law enforcement. And so that's the other reason. And so this is going to come into play. All right. So either they love their dog and want to give it a good life, or they have the dog's a liability and they need help because they've been forced into this. And so maybe the interest in being a dog trainer for their dog is really not that high. All right. So this is important to understand. All right. They have little or no interest in being dog trainers at all, right? They just want their dog to stop, or they want their dog to do. That's it. But they don't want to be dog trainers. They don't want to learn all the ins and outs of doing clicker training or reward-based training and all the ins and outs about it. And they want fast results, right? They can't wait. They need their dog to stop eating the neighbor kids. They need their dog to stop killing cats or other people's dogs, right? They need it now. They can't wait. All right. So Albert Bandura did a study or created a study called the Bobo doll experiment. Now, if you're going to want to learn more about that, just go ahead and Google in Bobo doll experiment or Albert Bandura, and that'll all come up. It's not critical that you know that now. Just know that what I'm going to talk about right now is from that. So again, I'm just giving you reference to know that I'm not just speaking out of my derriere, that there is a basis for what I'm teaching you. Again, because we can talk about dog training, but the important thing to know is that we're talking about human training more than anything else. All right. So you have all those factors with dogs, but you have this issue that Albert brings up, which is really, really important. Okay. Remember the fact that these people don't want to be dog trainers. Remember the fact that they're doing it because they love their dog or they're in a tight spot and they need to get it fixed. So some people can have, and so in the study, what they learned is that some people can learn a behavior, an action of doing something, and perform the learned behavior. So they can learn it and then perform it. Like some people just can do that right off the bat. But there are some people who can learn the behavior or learn how to do something, but not perform it. So they have it in their head, but for some reason they just can't get it, right? One of those things might be, hey, how do I motivate my dog and use only a motivational type of training and get my dog to do something? It can be complicated. Like the timing is super important. It may be even more important with that kind of training than it is with using some type of compulsion. So understand this, that there are some people that can learn a thing, a skill, but can't, and can also do it. And there's other people that can't do it. They can learn it, but they can't do it. So, and so based on this study, he learned this, that to learn, you must do these 4 things. All 4 of these things must be in place in order for you to learn how to do something, right? You must pay attention. So our students that are on the training field or that your house doing a private with, they have to be paying attention to you. They can't be texting. And that's why we tell people you can't be texting while you're at our training field. You have to be paying attention because we know this. We know they need to pay attention. They have to have a memory, which most people do, right? If they don't have a memory, then we're screwed because they will never be able to take the homework at home and do it. They can't do the homework. So we need them to have a memory. We need them to put it in their memory. That's why I think journaling is so important, because it helps with that process. They must be able to imitate. So imitate what it is we showed them. This is how you hold a leash. This is how you walk. You're walking like you're scared. And we show people what they look like when they're scared or nervous around other dogs. And we show them what they look like when they're leaders and they look good and they look like somebody their dog should look up to. We show them what that looks like and they have to imitate that, right? And so we need them to be able to imitate what it is we're doing. And here's the caveat. This may be the most important thing, is they need to be motivated. They must have motivation in order to make a difference in their dog. It is mandatory. If they don't have motivation and they cannot imitate and they don't have a memory and they don't pay attention, this will never work. So what does it have to do with the prong collar? And hold on, I'm changing over to my screen again. Stand by. So what does this have to do with the prong collar, the choke chain, and the electronic collar? Because it is the easiest way for some humans to get fast results. So we talked about in the last broadcast that on occasion I will take somebody's dog and show them that they actually have a good dog, right? Why can I do that? Is because I've been doing this a really, really long time. I probably give off a vibe to the dog that I'm not to be screwed with and that I cannot be intimidated by his shenanigans. And so dogs pick up on that very quickly. They pick up on the energy. They pick up on the way that you're standing and walking, and they respond. Right. And so in some cases, when it's the perfect moment, right, I want to make sure and get their attention. I want to make sure and motivate them at the right moment. I want them to be frustrated to the point where this is either going to work or it's not going to work. And so now when I know that's going to happen, I know that they're motivated. I know that they're paying attention, and I want to give them something that they can imitate. And so I show them what it looks like when their dog is perfect, when their dog is not pulling on the leash, when their dog is not trying to bite the dog next to them, when the dog actually sits when you come to a stop, or walks forward when I start with my left leg, or stays when I leave with my right leg. Why do I want them to see that? Because I want them to be able to imitate them. I want them to be able to see what it looks like so they can have it in their memory. And it needs to happen fast. Remember, these people come to us because they love their dog and they want to do something because they love their dog so much. If we don't make it fast, the motivation to make a change may not stay, right? The motivation may be temporary. They're motivated when they get there, but they go, oh, this is going to take a really long time. You mean I have to wait until the dog does the bite right behavior, and then I click, and then I give him a treat? I have to wait? I can't wait. I need my dog to not do this tomorrow. How do I get to that point where my dog can stop doing that tomorrow? And, okay, here we have a tool. This is how you use it. And this is what you need to do to set your dog up for success. You need to get distance from the things that cause you, and we give them direction, and then we show them so they can imitate it. It is much faster, much quicker for the human being. Again, I'm not talking about the dog. I know that all of you that may be watching this that be thinking, well, he's crazy. You just ban all these electronic collars. He's just making an excuse why he's being lazy with dog. No, because I'm telling you, when I get a dog, I don't use those things. I'm not lazy. I understand human behavior. That's why I showed you the slides about human behavior, which also includes classical conditioning and operant conditioning, right? And the fact that if you only give rewards, that it doesn't stay, that you need to have some type of consequence. Yeah, I sung that out, didn't I? That there has to be something. You have to give them an example to follow, right? And because it's for people to learn, again, remember, we're talking about the people. I don't care what Mary wants. Mary wants that. Yeah, Mary can have that in her world, right? People who come to her to learn about clicker training, they can have that. I'm betting that Mary does not get nearly the number of dogs that we get that just are almost done, that are on the road to being euthanized, that are on the road to being rehomed, that the people come to us crying because they don't want to lose their dog. That taking them into Mary's world, I'm guessing, because we've got so many, I'm telling you, I could not tell you, I've lost count. I don't know if I ever kept count because there's so many of them. How many dogs come to us and say, well, you were suggested to us by, I'll leave their name out of it, who is a clicker trainer or a purely positive trainer, because the dog did not fit into the narrow type of dog that they can deal with and use their type of training. You can do that. It works perfectly for the right dog and the right human being in those scenarios, right? But they have to fit into this very narrow type of situation. When you broaden out to the dogs that really need help, we're talking about dogs that are going to be euthanized. We're talking about dogs that are going to get rehomed. We're going to get dogs that are going to spend the rest of their life in the kennel because they can never be adopted out. You need to have somebody that can do that. And I know, again, I trained a police dog one time with as close to purely positive methods as I could. I did, and the dog was fantastic. Again, I was motivated by learning as much as I possibly could. I only used those methods. I put the dog in every scenario. I had the skill from years of doing it. And then I take and give the dog to the handler. It didn't take 2 weeks before the handler, the dog was out of control and the handler could not control the dog. The very same dog that I was able to train to bite a suspect, to release on command, to return to me, to call off after being sent on a fleeing suspect who was still running. I could do all those things with very few compulsion types of compulsion, which was, I think, withholding a toy was one of them. And holding the dog back from being able to get something. So I just merely held the dog back and tried not to give the big pop when the dog hit the end. So I tried not to get to the correction, but I was able to train the dog over a period of time. It took longer to do that than it would with the corrections, and able to do it just to see if I could do it. I had time with this dog. But when you give it to somebody else who does not have the skill, does not have the experience, does not have the motivation, does not have the desire, to learn how to take himself to the place where I was at that time, we had a mess. The dog, he could not call the dog off. He couldn't get the dog to let go. And we had to completely redo the dog's training, and something that I didn't anticipate, to go, oh, you ruined that dog. No, he's just a human being who is a police officer who simply wants his dog to do the job. Does that mean that we're going to give him some horrible, nasty tool he's going to torture the dog with? No, we're going to give him the right tool to be able to do the job correctly and to correctly teach his dog through positive and negative motivation, or positive, negative, motivation, to do the right thing. All right. And so that's the important thing. I often use the example of, third reason they have a good relationship with their dog and want to continue building a relationship. Nice. What a great info are you giving? What a great, no problem. Love it. Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. So let's go back to Mary. So Mary wants to outlaw all these things, right? She wants to outlaw them and make it impossible for us to do the job, right? Ban choke chains, ban prong collars, ban shot collars. And so what she wants is a world of just simply fluff dogs to live in Boulder, Colorado. Because what will end up happening is they'll end up euthanizing or doing something, shipping dogs out of that city, right? It's just Boulder, right? It's not the state of Colorado. So just out of Boulder. So and maybe that's it. Maybe that's her motivation, that, hey, there's too many dangerous dogs in our community. If we just ban the choke chains, the prong collar, shot collar, then we don't have to deal with those dogs because they will be euthanized. They will be shelter bound for the rest of their lives, or they will be shipped to other cities around us. And in Boulder, we will only have dogs. Dogs that don't, dogs have issues. Dogs, it's just what they're going to do. But there's so many things that are going on in my head. I'm trying to be nice. And that's fine. Mary, you can have your world, right? In your world of your dog training people and the group of people that you hang around with, don't use the ban. No, don't use the ban. Don't use choke chains. Don't use prong collars. Don't use shotgun. Don't. We don't want you to, because number one, you don't know how to use them properly, because that's probably why you don't use them, because you've hurt dogs with them or something, I'm guessing, or you've seen somebody that doesn't know how to use it, right? She doesn't give, and the story doesn't give the reasons why, right? Anything can be used. I will show you a video, and I wish I had it pulled up or a way of showing it to you now. I have a video of a dog that was trained purely on food to be a detection dog. It is the saddest thing I've ever seen in a dog. The dog is sad. The dog is moping around trying to search, but he's afraid he's not going to eat because it's based on the genetic desire to stay alive. I guess if there's a desire, the genetic basis of being alive is that the dog knows he has to eat in order to stay alive, right? And so this dog has come to think that if I don't find those bed bugs, I won't eat. I may die if I don't find. How motivating is that, right? It's not. It's a searching out of sadness and desperation. And oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I got to find the bed bugs, right? This dog doesn't have a pinch collar. He doesn't have a choke chain. The food is his basis for his training. Purely positive? No, horrible. It is the saddest looking dog I've ever seen. And one of these days I will break out the video. The problem is I don't have permission from the people that are in the video. You don't show their face. All you see is their legs. But I still have a feeling they might still be around, and I don't know if I want to do that. But if you see me in person, I can show you for sure. I may end up showing it. There may be enough time. That dog's probably dead by now, probably starved to death, and isn't around. That's not funny. I shouldn't have said that. But the dog is probably not around. Any dog, perfect. Doug Bradley says it. Any tool can be used inhumanely, and that's true. Gina says, I think she is doing this for mastermind marketing. She is getting her name out there, and now everyone knows who she is. Brilliant. Nice. Well, good for her. And my name won't get out there anymore because I'm talking about the positives of using those tools. The positive is that we have dogs, and I can tell you story after story. One of my favorite stories, and I think I've told this probably too much, but I've told it before. My favorite story is not that it's a fireman, because I'm a police officer, fireman. No. So anyway, the fireman drives to where we're training at Tri-City Park, where we have our group training. And I think that day we had a lot of people. I think we had 30 people there, split up into 3 different groups. I just remember being very busy. he comes in, he goes, hey, my name's blah, blah, blah. I'm a fireman with blah, blah, blah. I heard about you through somebody else at the police department, something like that. He goes, my wife thinks that I'm on my way to the animal shelter to drop this dog off. But he said, I love this dog. And she used to love the dog too, but the dog is out of control. The dog has tried to bite and growls at. He hasn't, we don't know if he's actually going to bite somebody else, but he shows his teeth and snarls, and we're afraid that if my wife's afraid that he's going to hurt somebody. So she wants me to take the dog to the animal control, which is a kill animal control. And so animal shelter. And so, but I wanted to come here first to see if you could help me. She's going to kill me when I return back home with the dog, but I want to be able to tell her that you said that you would at least try with this dog. And I want to go back to her and say, you know, I met with Andy over at Falco Canine Academy. He has experience in dealing with dogs like this, and he suggested that blah, blah, blah. And so I evaluated the dog. I said, oh, for sure. I mean, we can do something with this dog. It's not, you're not too late. And it's not a problem that cannot be, at least we can work towards having a solution for you so that you can bring this dog home. And the dog went through our, that time an 8-week academy. The dog went through the academy, and the wife accepted the dog back into their house. They loved the dog. The dog never left. The dog never had to go to the animal shelter. And we ended up getting Christmas cards for a couple of years with them, with the dog and their children, and everybody was happy. And that is one of my favorite. That dog was moments away from being dropped off at the animal shelter. The tool we used at that time was a pinch collar. We trained him how to use it properly. That dog was able to stay in the home. The dog did not get euthanized. The dog found himself a happy family that he could go on for walks with. They took the dog on vacation, and it ended well. Getting sobby just thinking about that story. Let me find some things here. Gloria Stillwell, another piece of work. Yeah, well, I won't put her name up there. All right, Victoria Stillwell. Victoria. Okay, so we're naming names. All right, so that's in the comments. Any tool we can use, mainly. Very good. So Gina, Doug, Jack, thanks for joining me. I just don't like people putting people's names up there. Again, they have their narrow way of thinking. Again, they have their narrow types of dogs that I know for sure. Again, I know these people. Even a very famous trainer up in the San Francisco area, which was also mentioned in the other posting. I've met her. I've talked with her, and I know that there's certain dogs that don't fit in the criteria that are allowed to be in their type of training. And then they move them on to somebody else. And so they can always say, every dog that we have in our training is able to do it without a correction. Good. That's because you don't allow the dogs in that don't fit into that for you to be able to use the techniques that you use. That any dog outside of that gets kicked out and has to go find somebody else. So the humans have to find somebody else. And then I think in some cases, the people, you know, that are just saying, I don't want to learn. I just need my dog to stop. Can you help me, please? And in the end, I think there's so many customers that came to us, and Gina may be able to reinforce this, is they come to us thinking one thing, and then in the end go, wow, this is kind of fun. You know, I didn't want to come here and learn all these dog training techniques, but what we're able to do is teach them a way of living with the dog that is entirely different than what they thought. And they go, oh my gosh, we can do this too? Wait a minute. We can see how long the dog will sit and we can walk away. Wait a minute. We can walk our dog up to other people with dogs and shake hands with them and have the dog sit. This dog who tried to eat the little chihuahua down the street, we could do that with like a chihuahua in your car. Yes. Yes, you can walk up. You can teach your dog to stay in a place for a long period of time and walk around. The dog stays in place. Yes. Yes. And it becomes fun and exciting. Why? Because we're open to all the tools that the human needs to be successful. Last point, I brought this up several times. The last point is that there may be, in some situations, a dog in a home where when the dog is in the control of the wife, the dog will be wearing one type of collar. And when it's in the control of the husband or maybe even the children, whether they're teenagers or not, will be another collar. Because, again, we base our training of the dog on the human being and what their needs are. It would be wrong for us to put a prong collar, for instance, on say a 90-pound dog with a 95-pound woman. We put a prong collar on, who the woman has spent a little bit too much time coddling the dog, not giving the dog leadership and that kind of stuff. And then give the husband, who is 270-pound MMA fighter, the prong collar on this dog, who totally respects him, who has has made sure the dog has discipline and boundaries and rules, and that will not go together, right? And so we tell the husband, hey, when you're walking the dog or going out with the dog, just either change over to the flat collar or even take the pinch collar off and walk the dog. And you don't need you as a human being don't need that on the dog, because you're going to overpower the dog, because the dog the brain is already engaged in you. And when you give that correction, it'll be more meaningful because the dog is focused on you. With the wife, the dog has no focus on her, and she needs, not only because of her weight and her strength, but she needs something to break through the dog's inattention to her, right? So the dog has complete attention on the man and doesn't need any more compulsion, because that would be wrong, right? But with the woman, the dog has inattention and has no desire to follow her lead because she doesn't have leadership. Now you need to create attention through the collar. So you need to make sure and understand that too, that in the same dog with two different people, two different tools. All right. When I was instructor at Lackland, I saw a handler use a basic choke collar and crush the dog's windpipe. Was correction. We ended up teaching handlers how to hold the leash, make corrections, etc., with their leash attached to a metal bucket. Yeah, I've seen that too. We used to have a test, I remember, in Anaheim, that one of the sergeants did, where they put a leash on a duffel bag, and the handler had to demonstrate the ability to give a proper correction on a duffel bag for a while. Now, and then we had also chain link fence as another way of doing it. So there's ways of doing these things. It's that you have to teach the people how to use the tools properly, and when you do, you can change the world with the dogs, right? The dogs are here. We got millions and millions of dogs. We have dogs that are stuck in kennels. If you talk to Cameron Thompson, she has dogs that that sometimes are difficult to adopt out, and the thing that may make a difference is the type of collar that you've trained the human being with in order to make it possible to adopt the dog out. So I hope that is a good enough response. I don't know how long I was on. I was probably on too long, as normal. But again, there's so much that needs to be talked about so that it makes sense. I don't want to just come off and say Mary's full of crap, right? No, Mary has her belief in her world. That is her belief in her world. That's all she knows, right? But she needs to know that there's dogs outside of her world. She needs to know that there's other things that are used. When used properly, they're very, very effective. And there's a lot more to training a dog than just the classical conditioning. That with some dogs, opera conditioning is mandatory, and dogs need to understand that there's a negative consequence to their action, and as do human beings. All right, so I hope that's it. Unless somebody has something else that they want to kind of throw up there very quickly. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Hopefully I didn't mess up any of the explanations. Every so often I say the wrong word to the wrong thing. No big deal. But somebody will call me on it. Feel free, please, if you're watching the replay and you say, hey, you used the wrong word or the wrong tense, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, somehow I got them crossed up. It happens, right? I'm not perfect. I've talked about Cameron Thompson. She has a way of using words, and I don't know that she's ever, at least I don't think she's made a mistake. That's not my world. I need the Ginas of the world and the Camerons of the world to show me how to speak and not mess up words. I cannot type either. You should see some of that. That's why I was a cop for so many years. You didn't really need to know how to type that well. As long as you got a report that kind of told the story, you were fine. As a detective, a really short story, a really quick story is. Oops, hold on, lost my mic. As a detective, one of the worst things about being a detective is reading other police officers' reports. We actually had a bell. We called it the recant bell because we were in family crimes. And this isn't funny either. Just know that cops have a really bad sense of humor. But we'd always get the wives calling the next day after their husbands got arrested and say, it really was my fault that he beat me up, and I don't want to press charges. And so she was recanting what happened the night before, even though we had the 911 call that said, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. You got to come and get him. And so we had this bell that we would ring every time we got somebody called recant. Well, mostly on Monday mornings, we get all these phone calls, and that bell pretty much rang all day long on all the cases that we had. But the other reason we rang the bell is when we would get a report from somebody that we never saw take a report. And there are certain police officers, they work harder to get out of taking a report than it would be easier and more simple just to take the report. And every so often we would get, I can't say any names, but let's say John Smith. John Smith's a very popular name, right? So say John Smith, who we worked with on patrol and that kind of stuff, we knew how hard he would fight not to take a report, and would talk them out of making an arrest, or would talk them out of, hey, you don't need a report, blah, blah, blah. And then we would get one. Hey, we'd ring the bell, and they go, what did you get? What'd you get? We go, I got, and it'd be like, baseball cards, like a rare baseball card. We go, I got a report from John Smith. He never writes reports. I can't wait to read this report. And then once we read it, we would know why, because it was horrible, and we couldn't even understand what he was saying. So that's my story back from law enforcement. All right. So that's it. I was waiting for a couple comments maybe to come through if I did something wrong or said something that wasn't correct. In either case, if you're first time watching this, whether you're watching it live or the replay, make sure and click on that link and download the free report on training your dog with love and respect. And that way you will get into our world, and we can send you any updates as to some of the train the dog trainer things we have going on, or maybe the competition, or maybe some of the other programs we have online that you can follow, like feeding your dog raw and natural, or dog park etiquette, that kind of stuff. That will come through in an email in the future, just kind of telling you about it every so often. All right. That is it for me. I will leave you now to go on your Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Doug, Gina. Oh, I shouldn't have started. I'm going to forget people. Jack, Nicholas from Argentina, Mona. I can't, if I go just join, really like, where I lost her. Where'd she go? I was scrolling too fast. Where'd Mona go? Mona, just, hey, Ken, if I go, hey, Mona, glad to have you. Mona Marie, just joined, really like where you are going with this. Oh, good. I'm glad. So happy. Sherry, nice to have you. Thank you for that comment. That's awesome. Jack Pitt again, Nicholas, Gina again, Gina, Nicole, Jack. There's my post. Deanne Goff. Thank you for letting me know. Kim Hollinger. Hope I didn't disappoint you, Kim. Kim was awful silent. Hopefully I did her proud. Love Kim. She has one of our peanut detection dogs with her daughter, Kendall, who is going to become a famous recording artist, songwriter. All right. That is all for me. All right. Talk to you later. Take care. Bye-bye.